Fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Well, welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. We've got Mr. Joe Smoker, tired,
worn out, smoking.
Worn out, yeah. Tired out. Well, why don't you take some Geritol?
I could use it. I could. Yeah. And that age, the gaps between rest are getting smaller. I'm doing the DIY yard projects. It used to be I could go forever. Now I can barely go, and my recovery time is forever. So that's a slight difference. Well, it's 90 degrees out.
You got to have less lawn, less flowers.
I need less house. I need to go
less
to
house.
The place, not worry about this anymore. But
yeah,
it used to be fun. There it is. It's like writing a book. There it is. I did that. That's the product of my labor, right in front of me. Now I'm going to walk all over it, and it's going to get dirty, and crud's going to fall on it, just like my books, right? So,
well, that's perfect. You're perfect for the interview today. Sound angry.
Yeah, I'm feisty. I'm feisty today.
Feisty. He's feisty, and so. Well, what can I say? We've got a writer who's feisty.
He's written feisty stuff through his
feisty
career.
Stuff.
Best-selling feisty stuff.
Oh, not just, yeah. We've got best-selling feisty. So listen, we're going to talk about the book called Fade In. It's a thriller, a feisty thriller. And we've got Kyle Mills. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So how's your garden?
I live in a townhouse in one place and an apartment in the other. Ooh. So, potted plant here and there, and that's about it.
Ooh. Next guest, please. Thank you very much.
No garden. Well, that's a nice life then. Well, what is it you do to kind of break away from writing, promoting, editing, all this whole lifestyle you've got going on and promoting? What's your kind of relaxation then?
Well, I'd say relaxation is kind of outdoor sports. So we're rock climbing, mountain biking, backcountry skiing, that kind of thing. But I also do a lot of work in the house. So while I don't have a yard, the house is getting to be about 20 years old. It's starting to fall apart. So.
Oh yeah. Endless.
You know how that goes.
Oh yeah. It's completely endless. I thought for a good time you could have said, well, I love gardening.
Yeah. My tomato plants are great.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, where we live also, it's a small town and it's gotten really expensive. So there's nobody to do any work here. So I literally I was pulling the windows out and cutting them out and replacing the glass in them. And, the great thing now is you have YouTube. So you can just put in, how do I replace glass in a window? Because you'd never get anybody to return your calls here.
That's right. YouTube University.
There you go. See, hey, Joe, you could hire Kyle. There you go.
Yeah, I could. He's a professional.
You need to hire someone. That's all. The new book. Are you excited? Like, tell us about this book.
Yeah.
How did it all come about? What's the storyline in this book here?
Well, this is after I had written for the Mitch Rapp series for 9 books, and so it was like 10 years. And yeah, I wanted to get out and do something on my own and move in a little bit of a different direction. So this is a character that I've resurrected from a book I wrote 20 years ago. Salam al-Fayed, he's Fayed to his friends. He's a former Navy SEAL and CIA operative, and he kind of gets in over his head with a group of billionaires that have become extremely powerful. And this is really about, the idea behind it is very much about kind of the rise of a ruling elite and how much power they're going to have going forward over us. So he's kind of fighting the good fight in there, but sometimes he's not sure what the good fight is.
Hey, Kyle, now Fade, has come back from the dead a few times. What's the world like that from 20 years ago when, because we kind of thought he was dead, to now? What's the difference?
The differences are just so stark. It's really funny. Even over the 10 years I did the Mitch Rapp stuff, it's changed so much. It was really funny to go back and read that book, the first book that Fade was featured in, because I've never actually had gone back and read one of my books. But, it's full of of references to like the sharper image, buying something off the sharper image. And the internet was really rudimentary back then. There was no social media. There were no cell phones when I wrote that book. So it was pretty fun to bring him forward in time. And, politics is really different. You think about, I've been writing political thrillers now for almost 30 years, and the landscape is really different. It was the Russians in the very beginning. It was, the Islamic terrorism. Now you have a lot of internal divisions. The United States is going through a lot of changes right now, for better or for worse. And it's a really different geopolitical landscape.
How does he interact with this new world?
Not that well.
Yeah, that's shocking, Fade.
The thing is, he doesn't know. He was in a coma from being shot in the first book, and he's not sure that he didn't prefer the coma. That he thought he was dead, and he intended for him to die at the end of that book. So he isn't that happy about being brought back, and then he gets sucked into these people that brought him back and sort of saved him. He isn't sure if he owes them or, if he should kill them because he doesn't really want to be back. But he needs something in his life to pursue and to give it meaning, I guess. And so he falls in with this group of very powerful people who are really kind of benevolent. They're trying to control the pace of change and a lot of the things that are happening now with AI, maybe even driverless cars, and the things that are going to cause really major kind of throwing a bomb into the society we've known for so long, whether they can slow it down or whether they can turn it more positive, because it seems like every time we get a new technology, it's used for the worst possible ends. And so they're trying to turn that around, but it's not as easy as they think.
How do you write that character? When you're writing, do you interact with the character in your mind? Do you sort of hear them, see them, feel them? Do you have a picture of who your character is, or is it something different for you?
No, I write from a pretty strict point of view. So whatever character's point of view I'm writing from, I pretty much inhabit. So I try to sort of become them. I guess it'd be like method acting or something, and then I don't have to calculate what they do and say. I can just, they do and say it, and I write it down. That's the easiest way I've always found for me to do things. To try to calculate what characters, their behavior, I think would be really overwhelming.
So I have to ask this question because having written in the genre, 30 years of writing political thrillers and the like, okay, we know Fade changes. How do you have to change your writing in 30 years? Or how have you morphed? More character-driven, more story-driven, more politics-driven? What is it Kyle's doing?
Well, shorter is one funny thing. The thriller novels have just gotten shorter. I think as people's attention spans have gotten a little shorter. I wouldn't say that I have evolved that much. Like when I'm writing for other people, I've written for Vince Flynn, I've written for Robert Ludlum, then I do adopt their style. I've been lucky in that I've been able to write about pretty much anything I want, any way I want, when I'm writing for myself. And it's worked for me. I get bored easily. When I write a novel, I really want to write about a subject matter that I'm passionate about, and I have a character that I'm passionate about. So my books have gone kind of back and forth. I've written, everything from a first-person general fiction book to a serial killer book to geopolitical stuff to military stuff. So it's really whatever's in the moment that I'm interested in. What's going on in the world right now that I'm interested in. And largely, I haven't had a series character. Then I think, what's the best character to tell this story from, the point of view from? And that's really why I brought back Fade, because despite the fact being an older character, he really felt like very contemporary and the kind of guy who could look at the world today and be kind of darkly funny about it, be a little philosophical about it, and try to put things together like we all do. The world seems really chaotic and we get caught up in it. And some characters in these books are very much they're masters of their universe. And, certainly like somebody like Mitch Rapp or Scott Harvath or, whoever, Whereas this character is, he can get swept along in things that are over his head, and he knows that. And that, I think, is a character that people can empathize with, because I feel like most of us feel that every day.
Well, if the books are shorter, then how do you balance the action and the character? I mean, you're known for putting more than just, bang entertainment books. You have themes and subtext in your book. So how do you, so for those who haven't read Kyle's books, read Kyle's books, how do you balance now the action part, the bang, the character development, and the themes you want to get across?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I did not write really elaborate action scenes until I started writing the Vince Flynn books. And honestly, that was one of the things that terrified me most about it. When I started really studying Vince's books, I like, oh my God, this action sequence has gone on for 40 pages. And I look back and I think my longest one was maybe 5. That's been a real learning experience. And I've continued that because it's really fun to do. So that's something I've taken from the Vince Flynn books and brought forward into Fade In, the more elaborate, lengthy action sequences. For me, though, and this has always been true for me, it's not hard for me to write a book in 100,000 words. It used to be 120 was more customary. People would go much longer than that, because I really am a stickler for efficiency. If you can say it in one word, don't use 2. Don't repeat yourself. Try to be as efficient as possible. Don't tell people about your character. Let it evolve through dialogue so they can get through, you're telling the story and they're getting to learn about the character. So I find that you can be pretty efficient if that's something you're interested in doing. A lot of people aren't that interested. They'd rather just go longer, which is fine. I mean, a lot of great long books, but it's never been my thing. So for me, it's been better. Maybe that books now are supposed to come in around 100,000 words. That's kind of like, that's where I naturally slot in. No matter how I plan it out, my books always come in around that length.
So when you're writing political, are you thinking about the reader then, or do you worry about what readers will think either way? Do you have to toe a certain line in order to publish a book in that way, or do you sort of just do what you want to do?
That's an interesting question, because that's really evolved. Readers now are much more sensitive than they used to be. They're sensitive to political themes. They have very strong political points of view. I think one of the interesting things to me about books is you get to see a problem from a lot of different perspectives, because whatever character's point of view you're writing from. And I've always really liked that about books, but I think people are much more sensitive about maybe reading characters that do not agree, whose philosophy doesn't agree with their philosophy. So that's something that you have to make a decision about now. I mean, are you going to be sensitive to that, or and really target the reader, which is certainly what I do when I write for other people. I knew who the Vince Flynn fans were, and I wrote books very much with them in mind. I don't do that as much for my own books. So, I mean, like I said, I have a theme that I want to explore. I want to explore it from a bunch of different angles. I want readers to be exposed to perspectives they wouldn't have necessarily been before, to make them think about, whether their views are right, whether there is a right or wrong. I like playing in the gray area between good and evil. So that's always been kind of my writing style, and always what I've been interested in, because the world is complicated and it's nuanced. And I think one of the reasons that it's getting very much broken down into black and white and left and right and all these things is because of that. Because it's gotten so complicated, it's easier to just break it down into more simple terms. I don't like to do that, so I've felt a pretty free hand.
Well, let me just veer here for a second, because I want to ask a process question, because everybody knows I ask questions that help me out.
It's all about Joe.
It's all about me. I'm pointing to myself. Are you a one book at a time writer, or do you have multiple projects at the same time? Are you able to write 2 books at the same time, or short stories in the book, or you just, I'm on Fade In and get out of my way, I'm going to get to the end?
Yeah, absolutely. I only do one book at a time. Which is becoming out of vogue, really. But
Yes.
yeah, I don't like a lot of my friends are doing multiples, or yeah, I can't do it. I wouldn't be that interested in doing it. I really like diving deep into one book, really getting into the characters, storyline, the research, and I just don't think I could split my focus.
Well, what do you hope a reader's going to take away from this book? Is it different than some of the previous books, or do you have a theme that you want people to pick up?
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, there's so many dangers now. I think we're sleepwalking into tyranny to some extent. And I don't necessarily mean that politically. It's also the power of technology, particularly with the rise of AI and the rise of, screens. And if you think about this, you go back and you think a few hundred years ago, right? We had dictatorships, monarchies, but even a monarch had kind of limited ability to interfere with your life if you're the average peasant, right? I mean, they could nail a decree to a tree, but you probably couldn't even read. And, you farmed and took care of your hogs, and probably not your day-to-day weren't thinking about the king. But now that's not true. I mean, I'm going to say the elites have us completely captured, right? We look at our screens 8 hours a day. They feed us what we want to see via algorithm. AI is getting to the point where it can target us individually. They know everything about us. The king didn't know everywhere you were, everything you bought, every friend you had, every thought that ever went through your head, right? But they do now. So the idea that they can target us on a very individual basis based on our profile, our likes, our dislikes, and this has been shown, they've done studies on it, and convince us of almost anything, is really terrifying. So this is what's coming, and I mean, it's kind of here to some extent. And we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. Are we going to just, go along, or are we going to fight it? And I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the answer is. And that's what this book explores. What is the answer? What's the right answer, really? I don't know.
Gardening.
Yeah, tomatoes.
Maybe you just turn it all off, or maybe you love it. I mean,
Yeah.
A lot of people like politics. I swear that the thing that gets them fired up in the morning is turning on, I don't know if you're on the left, it's probably MSNBC. If you're on the right, it's Fox, and getting really fired up, angry, and keeps their blood pumping. So maybe that's the future. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I teach this stuff in my social media classes. It's like, what am I get up today to be enraged about? I'm looking for something to be mad about. Well, how do all that impact the writing and publishing industry? The ease of access, the ease of creation, the less distribution networks, perhaps, or maybe the more distribution networks, perhaps. What does that mean, do you think, to the industry that you have spent 30 years in?
Well, it's changed a lot. Yeah, when I first started out, publishers were really powerful. If they wanted to, they could make bestsellers, right? They'd cram them into the bookstores. They do a bunch of print advertising, all those things. And, those levers are gone now. So publishing for an author now is much more of a partnership, and it's a lot more work. I mean, my interactions with fans 30 years ago were virtually non-existent. I mean, I would go on tour, maybe go to a book conference or two. Now it's constant, every day, on social media, on email. So these are very much partnerships. You have to promote these books because the publishing industry doesn't have as much power, and they don't have as much power to dictate to the bookstores how many copies to take and things like that. So a lot of that's being dictated by Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whoever. So it's really interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people are doing super well in indie books, and I can certainly see how you could do extraordinarily well in that because, I think about what we do. I do publicity. This is part of that. But you don't necessarily need a publisher to do that. Ads, a lot of the ads, and it's not like you're taking an ad out in the New York Times, it's a lot of, Facebook ads and social media stuff and really targeted online stuff. So, if you wanted to start your own kind of indie publisher and publish yourself, it's much more like that than it used to be. Whereas, I remember my first book. What did I know about publishing? Or I wrote a book on a lark. HarperCollins signed me, and I tossed them my manuscript, and that was basically my role. That was the end of it. I went on a little tour. So now it's a back and forth. You're talking to your publisher every few days, making decisions about publicity, about marketing, about print runs, and all these things. So definitely the job I got into and that I signed on for, frankly, was sitting in a basement by myself, typing. And that's not the gig anymore.
How much of that gig do you do? Now your time is split up. You have to break out the time, or are you a right at my own convenience type of writer?
I am super lucky in that my wife has a really long background in marketing and sales, and she now does a lot of this for me. Certainly anything that's hard or complicated. This is just not it's just not my sphere of influence. If I didn't have her, I would probably quit writing, because it's just not possible for me to do it. There are a lot of writers that are really different than that they are marketing wizards. They always have been, and they really enjoy it. But I don't know the first thing about it. Like, if you ask me what the advertising program for this book is, I would immediately have to ask her. So,
run away.
Yeah, and it's great. It's a great partnership. I know how to write books. She knows how to market them. The publisher I have, Authors Equity, is really good at this kind of thing and very modern in their thinking. So, but they don't want to talk to me. They just want to talk to her.
So how do you, when you sit down to write, are you able to write Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 sort of thing? Are you very regimented, very lined up like that? Or are you type that has to be in the right mood, has to be in the right location?
No, I'm pretty much a 9 to 5-er. I've never missed a deadline. And so I have it really mapped out by week, how many chapters I have to do. And so I work 5 days a week, at least. That's just on writing, not on doing the promotion stuff that's still left over that I have to do. Whether that's Monday through Friday, I don't know. It kind of depends on when the powder is flying or when it's a nice day outside. Better to work when it's raining.
Yeah, much better. Dark, cold.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a great thing. One of the things I love about reading a writer is the freedom of it. You can do it anywhere and any time, as long as you do it. You can't blow it off till 2 weeks before deadline. But I do love that. You work in the morning, work in the evening, work when it rains. I look at the weather forecast and plan out my week based on that.
Yeah, so you can garden on the nice days.
Come to my place.
More likely, paint my house.
Yeah, do something. Well, does a book change you? So, like, how does this affect you when you wrote Fade In and you've got it all completed now and stuff? When you look back, do you think it changes you as a writer or as a person or anything? Does it have any effect on you at all?
I think every book does, because you learn something new with every book. You do a deep dive into, it's an interesting thing about thriller. You do a deep dive into bioweapons, and then you're terrified of bioweapons, or you write a book about a very different, a serial killer book about somebody who's very evil, and you take away, you'd never really thought about people like that before. It's terrifying. So any character you write, you write a really prevalent female character. In my case, you learn about how women think. My guy is a Syrian American who grew up in a first generation Syrian family, and I got to do a lot of thinking about how does an Arab Muslim immigrant, what do they think of the United States? How are they treated? What do they see that me as a white guy has never seen? And so I love that because I learned so much about the world and different perspectives in different places that it's just made me much more well-rounded, I think, as a person, and much more sympathetic to other people because, to some extent, I've stood in their shoes.
Well, this is a natural segue to the cliche question, but I think it's important here is, how did you learn about Syrian American immigrants? Did you talk to any? Did you read? Did you go to the neighborhood? I mean, I'm writing a first-person female character. I'm talking to women. I'm having them read it. Tell me, that's not how do you do it?
I was lucky enough when I used to live in London, and I lived in a very Arab neighborhood, and this was a long time ago, obviously. And that was kind of one of the things that inspired Fayed, in that it was such a different culture and a different way of viewing things, and that was the initial sort of impetus for it. And then, it's I don't have a lot of access to Arab American people out in Wyoming, but it's watching TV shows about, documentaries or TV dramas that are, that have Arab Americans in them or Arab American families and things like that, and just getting a feel for it. And, to me, a lot of it is imagination. I mean, that's what I've always done is I take a scenario and kind of close my eyes and say, okay, I'm going to walk through the world. This is what's happening. So this is who I am now. How are people reacting to me? How am I reacting? So it's really fun to try to come up with those things. And actually I had a reviewer who has an Arab background who wrote a really great review of the book. And I was so gratified because most people don't think about this, but he was very approving of how I sort of treated that character and his ethnic background. So I feel like, oh, good. There's at least one person that thinks I got it right.
So what's coming up next? What do you got working on behind the scenes right now? Or can't you do that when you're doing a promo?
No, I just finished the first draft of the next book in the series. So Fayed's next adventure. Kind of, continuing with the same themes. I wrote so many books about Islamic terrorism that I really wanted to kind of hit the reset button and, you think about all the threats are so different than when I first started. Even throw in like climate change and runaway technology and all these things that are happening, or partisanship, the really heavy partisanship in the United States. So these are all things that are happening now and are really a challenge to write about. And I like a good challenge because, if you have if you have the evil Soviet Empire, if you have, an Arab terrorists or whatever, that's a really clear conflict. But this stuff is a little more, the current context is a little more meaty. You can really dive deep into what's going to happen, what's really around the next bend, and what are the hidden threats that we're not seeing.
Right. Evil Canadian, right?
Yeah.
Evil Canadians.
They're everywhere now. Everywhere. Trying to get across our border.
Yeah.
War with Greenland.
With your free drugs and all that sort of stuff. Get out of our country.
Yeah. Yeah. Terrible people. I'll tell you. I've been there. I'll tell you.
Well, yeah. So it's a fun, it's a fun thing to explore. And I don't think too many people are doing it because it's such a quagmire. Like too many other authors. Some are even going back in time a little bit to do more historical stuff.
The good old days of the Cold War.
Yeah, the Cold War and Islamic terrorism, all these things. And because you look at the world today and it's so complicated and it's also so volatile. In fact, this just happened to a friend of mine who was, she'll remain nameless, but you're writing something, then history overtakes you. And you think, oh crap, my book is almost done. I have to go back and rewrite it. Because you just have no idea what's going to happen. So that's my rule, never write about Iran.
Yeah. It was different. I don't want to say more stable, but more reliable 20 years ago or 30 years ago, the further back you go, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the Soviet area, the world had taken sides. You're either with America or you're with the Soviets, and that created, to some extent, stability. I guess you had to worry about, the end of the world and, everybody letting the nukes fly, but you knew where they were coming from. So, but now you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a good analysis. I was just musing with Al, like yesterday, about everybody brings up historical fiction. They're going to write a historical fiction book. Well, maybe that's why they just feel more comfortable going back to the good old days as opposed to trying to figure out something in the future days. Because everyone's talking historical fiction. So
it's hard to know who the good and bad guys are anymore, and because it's very much perspective, and so that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of where I've always liked to play in my books, like in that gray area. So for me, it's pretty comfortable, but I can definitely see if you're much more of a kind of a good versus evil. I've always thought of the Mitch Rapp books as kind of like modern Westerns. He was the lone gunman that rolled into town, and it's not like that anymore.
No, of course not. Well, because I think the sourcing is different, right? It's not, there's several, you can get sources on all sorts of information. You just don't know where it's coming from and why, or you can figure it out. But I think in the 60s, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about Israel now, you take the same set of facts and two different people can say, one person can be very pro-Israel, the other can be very pro-Palestinian, the Palestinians, with the same set of facts. And so that is a really interesting thing to play into. Whereas, you could be pretty confident during the Cold War that if you were writing for an American audience, they probably didn't like the Russians. Even now, even the Russians are a little gray. You're not quite sure where people stand on the Russians from day to day. So it's definitely kind of a scary playing field, but that's exciting.
Well, there you go. We'll let you do it. I'm staying away from it. I'm sticking to killers I know.
Probably best.
Well, it is what it is, right? So, well, listen, so do you do a big social media? Do you like to have people follow you and interact with you online, or a website and lemonade stand? Like, where do people find Kyle?
Yeah. So Kyle Mills author. And then I'm in the normal places, Instagram, Facebook, X. I've not delved into TikTok yet, and I may never, and then I have a website, kylemills.com. You can kind of get the updates, and I also have email. You can email me from there, and I read my email and respond to it. So, yeah, check me out on those sites, and you can get all the information you want.
Fantastic. Now, of course, we'll have that up on our website so people can find you easily. And what can I say? You should get on TikTok. You start dancing or do gardening. I don't know.
Don't do it. Evil empire.
Yeah.
Well, that's the three social media sites to keep up with is,
yeah, it's a lot.
I don't know if I'm looking to add a fourth, but you never know.
Well, all my classes are on TikTok, but 8 years ago, I started teaching was Facebook and Twitter. They don't even know what Facebook is now. And then TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. That's kind of basically the only place they are. TikTok is number one by far.
Yeah.
In just a few years. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. And
Book Talk rules, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does well.
And I don't really know that. I have to admit, I don't know that much about it. But
keep it that way.
Yeah. It's just done.
Yeah. You don't want to get too. It's that the balance of, you think, oh man, I'm pushing 60, and I'm like, well, should I be left behind by this stuff, or do I want to get involved with it? And it's a constant battle.
I'm over 60 and I'm on TikTok. Come on, do it, man.
Yeah, you're young at heart, Al. You're young at heart.
You must be.
Cut you into and count your rings. We'll make sure how young you are.
Yeah. Well, you got to do what you got to do, right? It's working. So. Well, we appreciate it. Everybody, get the book. Fade In. It's a thriller. And
Read
it's
Kyle's
Kyle
books.
Mills. Yeah, come on. He needs, get the support. He's not on TikTok, so get him going. Okay.
Yeah.
Needs a house.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.